The power of live events. In sharing your story, I believe there is nothing as powerful as bringing all of your stakeholders under one roof. That is why I have always centered my communications on live events. Why? We are all connected, and events are where current and future collaborators and stakeholders come together as human beings, sharing their stories in a physical way that is both purposeful and spontaneous. At a live event, you are living a shared story with other current and future team members and partners who can help you to the finish line. The serendipity of such meetings can produce great collaborations and lifelong friendships. That said, a series of simply random events do not a story make. There has to be something that holds the events together in a coherent whole. And let's be frank, there are inspired events and there are bad events. We all know how disheartening it is to commit travel time only to find poor planning, lack of inspired design and execution, and boring presentations, all of which create anger and frustration. But let's not dwell on the bad events. Instead, let's talk about inspired events. One secret to making an inspired event work is to make it feel exclusive. I try to make attendance at the event irresistible by giving invitees an opportunity to meet people they admire. For the best of all possible examples of how to use exclusivity to propel storytelling, look no further than TED, which stands for Technology, Entertainment, Design. TED is a huge testament to the power of storytelling, an event where scientists, writers, philosophers, musicians, business and religious leaders, philanthropists, and others are given less than 20 minutes to tell powerful stories about the inspiring projects they are working on. TED Online draws millions of viewers eager to hear those stories. Obviously, the stories themselves are interesting. But how did TED become so much of a draw in the first place? One big reason is that TED began as a who's who event. It started out in 1984 as a simple idea fomented by a clever and curmudgeonly graphic designer named Richard Saul Wurman. When Wurman started TED in the San Francisco Bay Area, he thought of it as a relaxed kind of dinner party attended by the most interesting people he would like to know but hadn't met yet. And he held the event in the beautiful city of Monterey, California, situated in one of the most scenic parts of the world. Some of the original invitees included people on the cutting edge of digerati thinking, like the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Nicholas Negroponte and Whole Earth Catalogs. Stuart Brand, then considered among the most future-casting members of that community. At first, the event lost money, but then it began to catch on. As it did, the roster of speakers grew increasingly glittering, including music producer Quincy Jones, who unleashed Michael Jackson on an unsuspecting world, architect Frank Gehry, and cellist Yo-Yo Ma. The event always played heavily to the cool factor. When men accidentally showed up in business attire to give their talks, Wurman hauled out a big pair of scissors and cut off their ties on stage. Long before Wurman sold the event in 2000 to Chris Anderson, a venture philanthropist, the event had attracted a devoted audience of invitees, such as Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos, who didn't mind paying the increasingly high entrance fees every year to feast from a banquet of surprising and inspiring stories and to meet fascinating people. The formula was an unmitigated success, and today, the TED Talks are a worldwide phenomenon. TED now has many smaller tentacles, touching the web, social media, and mini conferences held in local communities around the world. While today anyone can watch TED Talks online for free, and there are thousands of TEDx events worldwide featuring lesser luminaries than the original, it now costs many thousands of dollars and much influence to attend the main event, held in Vancouver, British Columbia. Point 4. Best of all, the stories from TED presenters are often so inspiring that they generate dollars and volunteers. for all kinds of important causes. Every year, a $1 million TED Prize goes to an individual who sparks global change. Obviously, TED is probably the highest benchmark for a big storytelling event, as the thousands of independent TEDx events in 133 countries around the world demonstrate. 5 However, it's not terribly hard to emulate that same model in your own city or community. You can start by bringing together people to share interesting stories related to a common agenda and a solid theme, as we did in the Philanthropreneurship Forum. Early in my business career, I worked briefly for the Jeddah Chamber of Commerce, where I was assigned responsibility for the exhibition and events platform. Nobody else wanted the job. I immediately introduced the Jeddah Economic Forum. We succeeded in getting the TED-like who's who of business and finance to give presentations and promote Jeddah, and we became a center for events, exhibitions, and trade. Once the first who's who signed on, a domino effect took place. The important speaker connected the event to a whole value chain of like-minded attendees and interested sponsors and media. With our events, we created a community of ambassadors who took the story beyond Jeddah and increased the appeal of the city as a vibrant place to do business. With a live event, you can use honey as money to become more self-sufficient. You can attract invitees who bring in their friends, and sponsors who attract other sponsors. At Sagia, the concept of competitiveness was underdeveloped and underreported, but we sold the Global Competitiveness Forum, amplifying the story of Saudi as an investment opportunity, a theme that interested the likes of Bill Gates. We attracted delegates, not just any delegates, but the top people in the global business world, who were our target investors. We created a seeing is believing momentum by using the event as destination and the time on the ground as a way to share our story in the media. At the live events sponsored by Al Dabaa Group and Stars, participants also mingle and swap stories about their projects and share their ideas about a collaborative agenda. At the Philanthropreneurship Forum, movers and shakers from NGOs, government, foundations, business, and philanthropy, including people like Paul Polman, Dr. Mo Ibrahim of the Ibrahim Foundation, Neri Woods, Dean of Oxford University's Blavatnik School of Government, and Dr. Toby Cosgrove of the Cleveland Clinic, come together to consider giving that disrupts the status quo. We invite the participants to bring their best stories and enjoy hearing from the other attendees. Together, they create stories within stories as they connect both during the events and afterward. Over drinks and food. In Chapter 8, Delight the Stakeholder, I described STAR's Foundation Impact Awards. It is hard to call out favorites, but I must admit this is what I consider the pinnacle of event-based storytelling for impact in my world. I gather a lot of inspiration from the stories of the work of heroes from NGOs, and I come away both moved and astonished. The award winners and their powerful stories are showcased in front of donors. The event generates media coverage that amplifies the work of the winners. At the event itself, a community of like-minded people share even more stories that educate, galvanize, and inspire. And I personally find a renewed sense of purpose, of meaning, in hearing these stories of hope and change.